Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the July 26, 2004 meeting of the Haltom City Council. We're called to order at this time, and we welcome all of you who are here in the studio, as well as those who are watching on HCTV. Our first item of business tonight is our invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Councilmember Dale Clark. If you will, stand and join us, please.
Our Father, thank you for this city and all its citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as city council members. Give us the vision and wisdom as we discuss and decide the businesses of the city tonight. In your name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We want to begin our council meeting tonight with a comment from our city attorney, Wayne Olson, regarding an item that may come up later in the council meeting. Mr. Olson?
Thank you, Mayor. Just anticipating that citizens may want to have some comments regarding a proposed settlement of the Richard Torres litigation. I want to explain to the citizens that that matter will be taken up in executive session after the council meeting. We're going to be meeting with the attorneys that are representing the city in that case who are not here yet. But if anybody has any comments about that, the council will accept comments during the Visitors and Citizens Forum that's on the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. And Mr. Muir, I believe you have some announcements tonight.
Thank you very much. I just have 4 things I'd like to talk about quickly that people might be interested in. There's a blood drive tomorrow in the library parking lot. The Carter Blood Center mobile unit will be parked there from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. And, of course, anybody is encouraged to come and give blood. National Night Out kickoff is from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. next Saturday, July 31st at Haltom Road Park. There'll be lots of activities for kids and adults, including a bike rodeo, bounce house, crime prevention booth, free food, fire safety demonstrations, and information about a variety of city departments. Of course, the highlight of the evening will be the dunking booth, where residents can take a shot at dunking their favorite elected official. Some staff members, I hear, have volunteered for this booth as well, so we hope that you'll all come out. It should be a lot of good, clean family fun. During the past few weeks, the city's been spraying for mosquitoes. To date, all but one section of town have been covered. All residents are reminded that they should, if they see a spray truck, to stay back from the vehicle and keep pets inside for 30 minutes after it's passed. Public Works has not only sprayed city thoroughfares, they've also concentrated on storm drains and drainage ditches. To cut down on the incidence of mosquitoes, larvicide continues to be used where breeding is considered likely. The city also collects mosquitoes once a week at 2 different sites for testing by Tarrant County. There have been no cases this year of mosquitoes collected in Haltom City that have tested positive for West Nile virus. All residents, however, should continue to eliminate standing water and not create a habitat for mosquitoes by overwatering their yards. They're asked to protect themselves by wearing long pants and shirts while working outdoors, especially at dusk, and to use insect repellent. And the city has begun a fund in order to purchase a light to shine on a flagpole in the new Trinity Cemetery on Northeast 28th Street. The pole stands in the middle of several veterans' graves. With no light on the pole, and according to protocol, a United States flag cannot be flown after dark. There's no one available to raise and lower the flag, making a light necessary. Those who would like to contribute should send their donation to the Veterans Light Fund at City Hall. The goal is to light the pole and have a flag flying by Veterans Day, November 11th, 2004. And with that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Mr. Muir, any comments from you? Okay, we move then to item number 1 under reports, our monthly financial report for May 2004. You want to introduce that or introduce our presenter?
Sure. Joel Welsh, our finance director, is going to go over that and probably also address the certified tax roll that we got from TAD Friday.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Included in your packet is the monthly financial report for the month and fiscal year ending June 30th, 2004. Beginning right after the table of contents is an executive summary that discusses any major issues concerning any of the funds. I would draw your attention to a few changes as our monthly report continues to evolve. On page 6 of the report, we have summarized the general fund report. Historically, it's been a 2-page or slightly even more at times report. It now fits on 1 page, but it is not so summarized that it's not meaningful, but it is now to a point where you can really get a good executive feel on 1 page. On page 7, the Water and Sewer Fund has historically included operating and capital improvement data. We felt that it was more useful to segregate that data, and so now page 7, the Water and Sewer Report, is only operational information. The capital improvement funds are now on page 10 with other funds. I would mention, sometimes I don't mention the investment report, which forms the back third to almost 1/2 of the document. The yields on our investments are beginning to improve somewhat. Our overnight money has been down as low as 1% on yield. In the last report, it still shows a yield of about 1.03%, but for much of the month of July, the yield on these investments have been about 1.25%. So we're beginning to see some improvement in the investment portfolio. And as Mr. Muir mentioned, we received the certified appraised values for Haltom City. This is known as the July 25th report. This will be the next to last report of values that we get from the appraisal district. The last report will be September 1st, and that will be the roll that they use for sending bills. One of the things that is an occurrence that is not uncommon for appraisal districts is for them, as they work through their rolls, to have some properties that they haven't gotten to by July 25th. We don't typically know about those properties and the values of them until we find out at the 25th when they give us an estimated value. We've been operating with the perspective of a pretty flat assessed value. We expected either the same as July 25th of last year, maybe a tiny bit more, maybe a tiny bit less. At June 15th, we thought there was a tiny bit more. But at July 25th, we found out that there was about $60 million in value that the appraisal district is still working on. As I mentioned, this is not unusual. The law anticipates this happening, that an appraisal district might reach July 25th, and there may be some property that still needs to be, as they call it, worked up. It's not under appeal or anything like that. They just have to finish the records on it. They have to take it to the appraisal review board, and once that's approved, then it's part of our role. The bottom line is, what that means is there's about $48 million more in assessed value than we expected or anticipated, or I would say at this point even hoped for, and that our net taxable value is estimated at this point to be slightly over $1.4 billion. Now, between now and September 1st, it's likely as they finish their reviews and their workups that this number may go down some. But I am really happy to be standing up here and say that I'm cautiously optimistic for the budget process.
Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Welsh? Councilmember Sutton?
Thank you, Mayor. Joel, I noticed that on page 5, that we had, it gives at the very bottom of the page a fund balance that we had projected for the adopted budget of 11% for the general fund in terms of what the balance is with the entire general budget, but we're actually running 27%, which is a 16% variance off of our 11, which is a great variance, but I just wanted to draw attention to that. Is that a true number?
As of June 30th, that is a true number. It is a number that you really want to be rather high at that point because we've received about 97% of our taxes for the year, and we're not going to get an awful lot more in the taxes, and so we will begin to spend that reserve down. But it is a very good position to be in. If everything holds like it's going, we will do better than 11% for an ending fund balance. So this is a positive
Fantastic.
sign.
Thank you.
Anything further from Mr. Welch? Mr. Muir, anything you'd like to add? That having been said, I'm in line for a motion to approve the monthly financial report. Councilmember Lanford,
Move to approve the financial report as presented.
Councilmember Hutchison.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? There being none, if you'll register your vote, I will display it at this time. And that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 2 is the Capital Improvement Status Report. Mr. Muir, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go through this quickly. For street projects on Mona, it's been, we're a little over 75% complete, which is about all the paving done. We still got curbs and driveway cuts to do now that that project should be finished in April of '04. For Gage Street, that's been delayed because of the rain, just like Mona's been delayed because of the rain that we've had. Gage is paved. All we've got to do on that is driveways and curbs. That should be finished by late August. Garland Street, we're a little late in getting off the ball on that. We were hoping to be started by now. It'll be late August before we start. The main problem is that the contractor's just a little too busy right now, so they'll put that off about 30 days. Let me jump all the way to the buildings. On the Municipal Service Center, we seem to have got our curved gutter profiles taken care of at the administration building. The work for those things has commenced already. For Phase 2, we are in the Fleet Center, the Fleet Service Center. We moved in there a couple weeks ago. We're still unpacking, but things are looking very good. And they've already demolished the old garage, and what will go up there is will be a storage facility. But they've already abated the asbestos in that building, and again, they've already destroyed the old facility. As far as for the rec center, the issues that have been going on in there with the interior issues, we're still dealing with some things regarding the finished product in there. We're still we've suspended work in there, but they're able to still continue work in some other areas that won't be affected, like painting metal surfaces, those types of things. So there's still work going on the inside. But the mechanical contractor has already replaced some of the refrigeration piping insulation and supports, and there is some progress going on in the project. The electrical services that I briefed you on the last month have been eradicated. Full electrical service is to the site now. Exterior concrete walkways have been placed along Broadway, but the handicap ramps are going to have to be removed because it doesn't meet the spec. So we're going to have to yank it out and redo it, or the contractor is, rather. Parking lot from the west door entrance to the north, all that's been paved in there. Once we move the parks trailer out of there, then we'll finish up the rest of it. Again, the project is progressing slowly. There are some legal issues, some insurance issues that are slowing it down, but there is some progress. And that concludes my report.
Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Muir regarding capital improvements? Okay, there being none, we move now to the consent agenda. That consists of items number 3 through 8. These are considered to be routine and self-explanatory, and they'll be enacted by the council with one motion. Councilmember Sutton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the additional clarification that on item number 8, Byron Black would be voted for the position of Community and Economic Development Board by Haltom City.
We have a motion. Councilmember Lanford.
That's a second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the insertion of Mr. Black's name on item number 8. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, if you'll register your vote. That passes by unanimous vote of the council. We move now to item number 9. Item number 9 and 10 are public hearings, and to introduce item number 9, Mr. Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, citizens of Haltom City. Item number 9 is a conditional use permit application for an auto paint body facility. The background is lot 20R1, Block 3 of the Golden Gardens Edition. Is located on the northwest corner of Midway and Thomas Road and contains approximately 1.834 acres of land and is locally known as 5629 Midway Road. The site is zoned M2 and does not allow for an auto paint and body shop without a conditional use permit with site plan approval. The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit to allow for this use on the site. The site does not front on a state highway and is not surrounded by industrial zone property as required by the ordinance. The site is designated as heavy industrial district according to the city's comprehensive land use plan. The land use map actually indicates a specific tract is low density residential, however. The CLEP will need to be amended to reflect this change. Recommendation at their meeting on July 13, 2004, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted a 4-3 majority vote to recommend approval of this conditional use permit with site plan approval request to the City Council and to amend the CLUP map in accompaniment with this. I stand to answer any questions.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Pliska before I open the public hearing? Yes, Councilmember Lanford.
Mr. Pliska, I just wanted a clarification. The land use map does show this to be low-density residential,
That is correct.
even though it is zoned M2.
That is correct. The M2 zoning is an old zoning, and I went back to search the origins of the zoning, and it appears on some of our oldest maps.
And-
So it's been zoned heavy industrial for quite some time in the city.
And we do have a number of spot zoned areas in that same vicinity there we talked about.
That is correct. There is a particular case of a spot zone on a C3 commercial district parcel that's immediately to the west along
you.
Midway. And if I could add during the discussions of the land use plan, the planning and zoning and the council at that time wanted to form and keep that area relatively for future development, low-density type residential development.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Hutchison and then Councilmember Clark.
Mr. Pliska, could you please continue and explain to us the environmental protections that we have in that area, specifically with regard to the paint being used and the protection the residents have, and the noise pollution that's in that area?
Thank you, sir. The performance standards of the city's zoning ordinance require that this type of use, and by decisions of the council, have a conditional use permit. And performance standards are discussed in the ordinance that indicate those situations where too much noise, too much pollution, too many different facets of noise that might affect the residential quality of life should be addressed at the conditional use permit stage. And during this process, that is why the conditional use permit is required with site plan approval to make sure those buffers are ensured in this type of development.
Anything further? Councilmember Clark.
Yes, sir. Let me ask you a question.
Turn that on.
Okay, thank you. This is zone M2. If this is denied tonight, what other type M2 buildings could come in there, manufacturing?
Good question. M2 is the heaviest zoning in our zoning ordinance. All the uses that lead up to that would be allowed as well. Retail, contracting, any type of lighter use is of course allowed. But also that is the heaviest use of the city. But even at the M2 level, you have conditional use restrictions, again, to protect in case this type of use abuts residential or would affect any type of commercial development.
So then we'd be in a zoning, not a zoning, but a ordinance situation. Times, morning, night, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lanford and then Councilmember Hutchison.
Mr. Pliska, you mentioned that the zoning was quite old.
That is correct.
How old is the land use plan?
The land use plan was updated in 2002.
Okay.
And is a 5-year projected future land use plan.
And which of those two is the most basic document in terms of the city's intent for land use?
The
What-
comprehensive land use plan, as we're discussing, is for future development in the city. The P&Z and the council looked at this land use through a series of public hearings and public input and addressed this by adopting a update of the plan in 2002.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Hutchison.
Redirect, Mr. Pliska, how many paint and auto body shops are in that specific area?
Very good question. There are quite a few in that area, as there is existing industrial in the area. Existing industrial in the southern portion of Midway, immediately adjacent to this site. There is additional industrial areas to the south and west of this particular site. I would roughly say there are 5 uses of this nature within a several block radius, particularly to the south on a suite of office warehouse situation that is south of Midway.
And they all meet the requirements of the plan that Mr. Lanford brought up just a few seconds ago?
That is correct.
Okay.
They must address performance standards as well, since they are in close proximity to the city's zoning ordinance. And that is why on the submitted plan tonight, this applicant indicates an auto paint and body shop with a paint booth to address that particular issue of this type of use.
That's what I wanted you to bring up, is that there is a paint booth within the paint and auto body shop. Thank you.
That is correct, and that paint booth must meet the minimum requirements of the city's building codes.
Councilmember Clark.
Just one more question. The applicant is the owner, will be the owner of the paint and body shop? That's his business, his profession?
Yes, sir. He has an existing auto paint and body shop located in the southern portion of the city, and he is attempting to relocate this facility further north.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, all questions or comments from the council having been addressed at this time, I'll open the public hearing and allow anyone in the audience who'd like to have an opportunity to speak on this subject. First of all, Mr. Hedgecock, are you representing the applicant here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you would, please.
Thank you. I'm Ernest Hedgecock with Consulting Engineering Office, and I have a real interest in this property. My office is right across the street from this lot, and I want to give you a little history about this property. It's at the northwest corner of Midway and Thomas Road. The property to the east of it is my office, which is on C3. The property, which is all along Thomas Road on the east side to Wall Street, is zoned C3. The property immediately behind us, which is to the north of our property, is zoned M2 and has manufacturing, 2 manufacturing plants, warehouses and buildings back there. The property immediately across the street from this property is zoned C3, and it has an electrical contractor's office. The property just to the west of that on the south side of Midway is an industrial warehouses and offices, which I just platted. I was here last month or 2 ago for the plats for Mr. Sturgeon. The property immediately to the west of this property is zoned SF2, which is an older house, but the property west of that SF2 is zoned C3. So we are not disrupting a residential neighborhood by asking for this conditional use permit. My client currently operates a paint and body shop on Salona Street, which is just a little bit to the west and south, closer to the freeway. What he's proposing, we're not asking for a new auto paint and body shop. We're just relocating this one up there, and we expressed this desire to the client afterwards. Some of the things that was required by the planning and zoning, which we've all agreed to, was to this is going to be a standard metal building with a brick facade up to 50% of the height up on the front and along each side. It will be fenced in on the west side between the residential property, and it will also have a 10-foot buffer zone for landscaping, which we planted trees all along there according to the city's landscape plan. We also are planting some trees along Midway Road and down Thomas Road to help soften the look of this paint and body shop. We will be fencing the property. If you look at your site plan that you have, the fence will go from the northwest corner of the building, as it is shown on here, all the way to the north property line, and then along the north property line to the northwest corner. We've shown a second building as a future building in there. I did that at my request, just because if the paint and body business decided to fall off, and he could build another one without having to bother y'all with getting a site plan revision. And that was a future building. Right now, we have no plans to construct that building. The main construction will be the middle building there, for where it says proposed building 1. And that in the site plan shows the floodplain across the property. However, I have topoed the site, and the whole entire site is not in the floodplain. The floodplain elevation across that property, based on the floodplain map, is 516. We're going to place our finished floor elevation at 517.5, but every piece of ground on that site is above 516. It's 517, up to 519. We've topoed that when the platting was done several years ago. And like I say, this is not a totally new use of the property. I've been in this area since 1952, and my mother owns the house right around the corner on Bertha Lane, and Miss Penny used to own this property, and my son used to mow this yard. And I'm very familiar with the property, and it has been vacant. This house was torn down in the 70s. So we've had a vacant piece of property sitting there since 1970, not drawing any kind of anything except just the minimum top property tax. And this is going to be a viable business that will be an enhancement to the neighborhood. And we still got the old nursing home across the street that I can't do anything about, but it's right across from my office. But I think this will be an enhancement to the neighborhood with the landscaping plan, with the fences that will block off the property immediately to the west. And as one little note, I have been in contact with the owner of the SF2 property, and he has expressed an interest in getting that zone to C3 with an office warehouse type facility. And I've drawn up several plans for him, and he's considering what to do with that. So this SF2 property, I suspect, will go away shortly, even though the land use plan calls it low density. There's very minimal houses between this property and the creek. If you go back down Midway Road, you'll find many more industrial uses all along the corridor there in compliance with the land use plan. I'll be glad to answer any questions I can. The owner of the land is here, and the operator of the paint and body shop is here. And we did agree, as part of the planning and zoning people's recommendation, we've agreed to limit the hours of operation from 7 to 7 on Monday through Friday, and from 7 till 2 on Saturday. The noise level will, I've talked to the operator, and he says that, there really is not a big noise issue. They work during the day, and the appearance, one of the questions came up about the appearance. I'm recommending it'll be kind of a tan metal building with the tan brick, and we'll have a monument sign out in front with the operation. And I feel like that since I'm going to be right across the street from it, I don't think the paint booth is going to be an issue. It's going to meet all the state requirements. And I've talked to the fire department. We'll be installing a fire hydrant at the southeast corner of our property, or the northeast corner of our property off of Thomas Road. There's already an existing fire plug at the southeast corner of Midway and Thomas Road, which will cover this building. But in order to have a complete coverage for fire protection, we're going to install a fire hydrant at the northeast corner of this property here. So I feel like we will have it safely covered, and the operation they've been in operation for several years with no problems with the fire department. And we'll meet all the fire department's requirements. And I do want to remind you that M2, like Mr. Hutchinson said, has many objectionable areas that I would be objectionable to that would not require a site plan or approval. They could just come in and build it. So I feel like this will be the best use for the property. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hedgecote? Okay, I believe there are none. Thank you very much. We open the mic now to anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this ordinance that is proposed. Okay, this is a public hearing. Mr. Grzan, if you'll give your name and address for the record.
James Grzan, 6208 Little Fossil Road.
You have 6 minutes.
Basically, I want to speak in favor. Mr. Ernie has drawn several foundation plots for me that have been installed all over North Texas. We have had none to fail, and to my knowledge, we've never had one questioned. But Ernie, the comments have been made about this industrial zoning. Back in 1992, I spent many, many nights up here in this city hall with some other people that intended for that area south of 28th Street, east of Haltom Road, to be primarily industrial. The folks that had houses in the area wished to stay there, no problem. They also understood that their neighbors were industrial. At the time, Electrolyte moved here from over on Vickery Street, West Vickery in Fort Worth, Texas. Several other companies moved in on Midway Road and henceforth developed quite some industrial base there. The intent was, as people got older, their property would be worth more in that area back in those days, industrial, than it would be as residential. That has somewhatly changed. Smaller residential houses have kind of picked up in value. However, this area should be a multi-use area, and a paint and body shop does not put out any more fumes than a plastic manufacturer that would keep all of his stuff indoors. So I strongly recommend it be passed. That was the land use intended in 1992 that was adopted about 1995. And for those of you that weren't here, I was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grzan. Do we have anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Yes, Mr. Eklund.
My name's Ray Eklund. I live at 2532 Oakwood Terrace, which is just off of your maps that you have there north of this property and behind it. I brought some material to share with you because this is a visual concept thing. I need this copy, please. Yesterday was Sunday. All the auto body shops in Haltom City mostly were closed except one. I wasn't able to go during the week to see what they look like during the week because I'm busy working. But on Sunday, I drove around and took the pictures that you see on page 2. We don't have a page 1, so I thought I'd throw that in there. Page 2, we have some auto body shops, and what we see from the street, major thoroughfares that our visitors see when they come to visit us, we see a wrecked car, they're in picture A and B on page 2. Page D, this is not even an auto body shop. Page D, this is a car repair shop, and this is what you get to see from the street. Picture number C on page 2 is another broken down, beat up car in front of somebody's shop. We're going to talk about fences here. Y'all are going to decide what kind of a fence that this place should have, should you choose to zone this and change the plans to make this thing happen. And we're going to talk about enamel metal fences. These are pictures on page 3 of fences around these types of buildings here in town. Okay, you see a big mess down here on A, the fence falling down, the gate falling down. That's an auto body shop on page 3A. D is a wrecking yard with a metal fence. Metal fences look like wrecking yards. That's what you do to hide wrecking yards. There's a nice building over on Weaver, a nice good-looking building, vacant, got a big sign in front of it saying, please come rent me or buy me or do something to it. There's another auto body shop with another beat-up car over there on picture B. C, bunch of cars in storage with people looking at them. This is from Broadway. F is a nice building. And G is some more cars in storage in front of the place where everybody can look at them. Page 4, we have some more metal fences. This is what metal fences look like after a while. This is not a good thing. I brought these pictures to share with you. There's one particularly nice one, H, is on Carson Street. Looks like a prison, but it's clean. It's neat. You can't tell that it's not a prison. You can't tell what it is. Page 5. Here's pictures from Salona Street. Lo and behold, there's an auto body store over there on Salona Street, a few blocks over. Now you got this big old ugly junk truck in front of the place. You got the trash stacked up over here. Right? You got the truck again. You got the trash, and then you got 2 more cars over here, and then you got the fence that's probably 6 or 8 feet tall, trying to hide the stuff in the backyard. I'm not sure that this is the same person that's making the application here or not, but this is the same street. Craig's Collision on Beach. Now, I heard from persons that they tried to fashion this auto body shop after Craig's on Beach. I appreciate the landscaping that I saw on the plan. I'm sorry I didn't get to visit with the plan a little lot more. Craig's landscaping is close to what you'll see there, so you can actually see pictures of what this might look. However, the building at Craig's is a nice, big masonry building. Maybe your people can tell you how big it is, but it's masonry. It's taxed as masonry. It's valued at masonry. It has brought some value to our city. It's not a little tin can box that you can put up in your backyard, you know, with a couple of guys in a thing. You know, with these guys, these little tin can buildings are all over the place, and they're okay when you get them over where they belong. For example, and y'all, I'm afraid may not be familiar with this. This is my neighborhood. This is where I hang out all day long, all week long. I know every square inch of these square miles down here. Right? If you get over to the east, over by Weaver, the little tin can buildings aren't a problem. Nobody lives over there. Nobody cares. Go in there, work all you want, leave your cars out front. It's okay. You get over here where we live, Thomas and Midway. Hundreds of people live over here. Okay, they're busy rehabbing. The mayor mentioned in the budget meeting last week about the revitalization of the South. Let me tell you, ain't nobody in this room knows more about revitalization of the South than me. Right down there. I know which houses are built. I know who put them back together. I know how much money was spent on them. It's my thing. Okay? So I have a list here of houses within spitting distance of this particular project that have been rehabbed.
Mr. Eklund, you are at 5 minutes. You have one minute.
That's
to
a
go.
long list. Okay, how's that? You can walk to all of them from this place. I don't believe we need an auto body shop with wrecked cars, big ugly fences. Right? I think the beautiful park that we spent, what, $4 million to get fixed over there, that we're waiting to get out of the floodplain, we're going to have a nice linear park on the south end of town down there, 2 blocks from this place. Okay? The families that live over here might want to walk down there. The families that are walking by now walk by nice old trees and stuff. Page 8 is very important. Page 8 is what the property guy said to me after the P&Z meeting. Nobody is going to build a nice building like that in Haltom City. That's what he told me. That's what he said to me. The guy who lives right behind this thing, he said, we're not going to build a nice building in Haltom City. We want to build this tin can box and be happy. I think you shouldn't be allowed to do that. I think you should build a nice place.
Mr.
Here's a couple
Eklund,
pictures. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Your time is up. If you will wrap up quickly, please.
I certainly will. Mr. Pliska talked about performance standards. We talk about gates being open. We talk about doors on the front. We're going to be looking at these cars and all these things over and over again. We don't have enough code enforcement now to get the building across the street that's been falling down, the roofs out of it for 10 years. How in the world are we going to enforce the codes with the junk cars and stuff on this particular property?
Thank you, Mr. Eklund.
Thank you. I want the guy to build a place. He needs to build it over in the industrial area. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else in the audience wishing to speak for or against this proposed ordinance? If you will, give us your name and address for the record. You need to get to the mic, if you will, so we can all hear you. You have 6 minutes.
My name is Bill James, and I own a property, and what this gentleman attributed, what I said to him is not true. I did not say that people would not build a nice building. These people are spending a lot of money, or hope to spend a lot of money to build a nice-looking building, and I've seen their operation. They're hard-working people, and let the marketplace determine whether or not their auto shop is a success. Not some. This is not a residential neighborhood. It isn't.
Gentlemen,
that's all I have to say.
One person speaks at a time. Anyone else wishing to speak on this subject? Yes. If you will, give us your name and address for the record, and you have 6 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Betty Parker. I live on Ellison Avenue, which is a block and a half from the place where they're going to be building this. I don't want it there. I don't want the junk cars. We have a church that has a body shop right across the street from it. It's the biggest, ugliest mess that you've ever seen. And I don't want a replication, no matter how nice it is. When you have a repair shop, you have to have something to repair, and the things that are repaired are broken down cars. This is a residential area. The way they've described it, they made it sound like there are businesses everywhere and nobody lives there. The north section of that highway are houses, nothing but houses. There are a few scattered, very conservative-looking businesses that are so quiet and so unobtrusive that you don't even know what's being done there. On the other side of the street, there is a lot of commercial buildings. I don't want them encroaching any further into the property where the houses are. This area, as they pointed out, is starting to be rebuilt. People are going through there and tearing down and renovating and remodeling and building additions to the homes that are in that area. I've had people come up to me in my yard and ask me, what did I think about them coming in and building more expensive homes, brick, permanent buildings. People are interested because these lots were once all 1 acre. You don't find 1 acre lots anymore for people to build houses on. They have old trees, an old neighborhood. There are places that are run down. There are places and problems that are in code reinforcement, and we've had a lot of those. There are dumpy looking places, but it's a place that has potential, and it's something that would be lost if industrial area encroaches any further into our residential area. I don't know anything about them zoning it for heavy building commercial type things over the years. I do know, like I said, on the south part and over on Carson, that there are businesses in there. There's nothing we can do about that other than say, all right, Midway's far enough. You don't need to come any further into the residential area. We'll lose. If that's the case, people will not come in there and take that properties. We just now got rid of one directly catty-cornered from what they're talking about that had all kinds of construction equipment parked in their yard and this horrible fence and this horrible house and the ugliest mess that you'd ever saw right directly behind his business there, didn't you? That you just got rid of.
Yes, ma'am. That was zone C3.
One person at a time, please.
So, right at the corner of down the street on Midway and Carson there is a car repair shop, and catty-cornered from that And if you want to see solid car-to-car-to-car-to-car junk heaps in a quarter of an acre, just drive by there and take a look and see if you would like that in your place where you're living. I don't know what else I can add to that. I just remodeled my home, and I don't want these businesses coming up to it.
Thank you very much. And would you give your address again for the record?
Yeah,
We failed.
5724 Ellison Avenue.
5724?
Ellison Avenue.
Ellison, okay. All
And
right, thank you very
just-
much.
That's one block up and not even a half a block in from where they're going to put that.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item number 9? Okay, there being none, I close the public hearing at this time, and I will entertain a motion regarding the wishes of the council on ordinance number 2004-009-15. Councilmember Lanford.
For the reasons I stated before when we were asking questions, I have great concerns about the viability of this section of our town and its viability as a neighborhood and as a residential neighborhood. The encroachment of heavy industry is, I think, unwarranted. The land use plan is clear what the intent is, and therefore I move that we deny ordinance 2004-009-15.
We have a motion. Councilmember Reese?
I would like to second that, please.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Did you have a question?
No, I was just wondering if my light,
Your light didn't show up down here. Okay. Okay. We have a motion and a second. No discussion. If you will, register your vote. And the motion passes 5-2. You got everything? Okay. We move now to item number 10. This is another first reading. Reading of this ordinance, Mr. Pliska, you want to introduce this for us?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, citizens of Haltom City. This is a rezone from SF2 to C3 for lots 1 through 5, Block 25, Watauga Edition, located in the 5400 block of Western Center Boulevard and the 6200 block of Huddleston, containing approximately .927 acres of property. The site is zoned SF2, single-family residential. The applicant is requesting a zoning change from the SF2 district to the C3 commercial district in order to develop 2 of the 5 existing lots. Currently, 2 of the lots are vacant, and 3 lots have structures on them at this time. Brief recommendation: at their meeting on July 13, 2004, the P&Z Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the zoning change request from the SF2 single-family residential district to the C3 commercial district to the City Council. I would like to add, Mayor, that this is in with recommendations with the city's land use plan.
You've heard the introduction by Mr. Pliska. Members of the council, any questions or comments before I open the public hearing? Okay, there being none, I'll open the public hearing at this time. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak either for or against this request on this zoning, on this ordinance? Owner of the property here, if you wish to address us, come forward at this time. Please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Ron DeMetro, and I'm at 3813 Chestnut Street in Fort Worth. And I own a rain gutter installation business, name's Metroplex Rain Gutters. And we're currently leasing space there on Huddleston. And we bought the property with intent to put up an office and warehouse space. Mainly it'll just be used for office and warehouse. We don't do any kind of work or construction on that site. All of our work is done on the job site, so it'll just be used for warehouse space for our materials, and then of course the office to do the bookkeeping. We plan on building about a 3,000 square foot building. Any questions?
Any questions for the gentleman? Councilmember Sutton?
Thank you. Mayor, have you had any contact with the church opposite you about your intentions, or any of the parishioners or anything there, or do you know any way that they feel about this?
No, I've had no contact with them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Clark?
Yes, sir. Can you tell me how many employees will be there? How many vehicles will be parked, the comings and goings?
I have 4 employees, so there will be no more than 4 cars parked there during the day.
Further questions? Councilmember Hutchison?
Yes, sir. Could you tell me what the site's going to be used for then? Is it a storage facility and just an office building and that's it?
Yes, that's correct.
Anything further? Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak either for or against this item? Okay, there being none, I close the public hearing at this time, and I'm ready to receive a motion regarding the pleasure of the council on item number 10. Councilmember Sutton?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to approve ordinance number 0-2004-010-15.
We have a motion for approval. Councilmember Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, if you will register your vote, and that passes by unanimous vote. Having completed the public hearings, we have an item that needs to be clarified from a previous motion that was made. And Mr. Muir, do you or Mr. Olson want to address that?
Okay. Mayor, I think the clarification's on the consent agenda. When we were talking about appointing former Mayor Byron Black to the Area Metropolitan Ambulance Authority, I think the board that he was being appointed to was incorrectly stated, and we just need to clarify for the record that the appointment was to the AMAA board, which is the MedStar board.
Does the council need to take any action regarding that, or just a point of clarification?
No, just a point of clarification.
Okay. Everybody on board with that?
Guilty as charged.
Thank you. We move now to the Visitor Citizens Forum, and this is a time set aside for any person having business before the council that's not scheduled on the agenda to have an opportunity to speak to the council. And you heard our attorney state earlier that this is the place. If you have any comments to make regarding an item that may come up for action by the council later, and that having to do with the settlement in the Richard Torres versus the City of Haltom City case. So that, along with other items you may wish to address the council at this time. I want to remind everybody that all comments must be directed toward the presiding officer and not to the audience or to an individual council member or to a staff member. Each speaker must limit his or her comments to the subject matter listed on the speaker's request card and must refrain from personal attacks toward any individual. Remember that the council cannot discuss or debate any issue brought forth at this time, nor can any formal action be taken since this was not a posted agenda item in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Law. Having said that, a 6-minute time limit will be granted to each of the speakers tonight. Our first is Mr. Robert Downs. Mr. Downs, you've asked to speak on the subject of rent house.
My name is R.J. Downs at 5113 Nadine, and what I'm here to ask you to do is to check some kind of ordinance or laws on these rent houses. The rent houses are just like a grocery store or service station. They're a business. I know several friends that own 6 or 7 each, and they need to be under some type of law or ordinance to keep them up to code and city ordinances. Thank you.
You want to say anything? Thank you, Mr. Downs. We appreciate your comments. Our next speaker, Mr. Grzan, on the subject of raising taxes. If you will, give us your name and address again for the record, and you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is James Grzan, 6208 Little Fossil. We had a discussion about freezing taxes, and now we're told that we're going to have to raise taxes a little bit. I guess that this happens. I don't quite understand how it can happen like 14 days apart, Mayor. It just doesn't seem feasible that no one knew about this prior to the tax freeze. It should probably not concern me. I probably should not be standing here. I'm handicapped. I'm fixing to change a piece of property over for $12,000, and I'll go down to Tad when I do that and show him the paperwork and pretty well suggest that we go ahead and change the tax, the evaluation on that piece of property to $12,000. I think I'll walk out the door, get me a drink of water, and walk back in with my doctor's certificate and freeze them there. A man just walked up here wanting to build a building that's going to be in excess of a $100,000 valuation, and he just got turned down. And I certainly listened to what was said, and I can go along with everybody that their reasoning was right for what they were looking at. However, I don't believe you have to have 20/20 vision to see that it's not a very good idea to raise taxes for whatever reason less than a month after you have a tax freeze. The two numbers just don't coincide. I believe that the council, I want this to be a very positive council, and I'm not too sure that we're not misleading some people and need some clarification. Can I go ahead and talk about Mr. Torres now?
Does
Mayor,
he have?
I'm asking a question. I do have two filled out.
If you don't mind, let's make a clean break since we mentioned that need to address. You filled out two different cards, so
Yes,
if you don't mind, just have a seat and we'll be right back with you in just a moment, Mr. Grzan. Our next speaker tonight, Bob Watkins, on the subject of executive session.
Bob Watkins, 6140 Blue Spruce Circle. Well, you messed up part of my conversation by putting something at the end that is on the agenda at the beginning. I don't know whether that's legal or not, by the way, but that's not for me to judge. I haven't been here all that many years, but I don't ever remember executive sessions till lately being at the front of the evening so that people can't speak on things, giving you their opinions. I'm relatively certain that nobody's going to change their opinion because of something I think, but I'd at least like to take a shot at it. And so I believe that the executive session should be at the end of the night like it's always been so that a person can read down through it and comment on something that they see and perceive that they have an opinion on. Now, being as how I was waylaid, Mr. Olson, do I get to talk about Mr. Torres? That's what I wanted to talk about.
It's a matter of order for the mayor, but the discussion of Richard Torres' settlement is acceptable tonight under Visitor Citizen Forum.
Okay,
I'll keep this short also.
Okay, that is a part of the comments you're making about executive session, so go ahead if you would.
I understand all the reasons that appear to be obvious why there should and should not be a settlement. But what stands out in my mind is the fact that there's 8 people sitting up here, and it's a little like the ethics thing that y'all had here a few weeks ago. It'd be hard to expect for the people that benefit from something to voice an opinion other than what would benefit them, no matter who it is, y'all or anybody else. So as I see this, if a person sitting on the council at this time were to decide to vote against Mr. Torres receiving compensation, that would be an indication that the recall was not right. So that would be, this is a two-sided sword. If you cut it this way and say no compensation, the other side of that blade would be, well, there was probably an error and this recall may have been a farce. And I stated last time what I'll state again, and as Mr. Grazan spoke on the taxation thing, I don't see how we can freeze my taxes and try to limit the tax that they're going to, that y'all can raise us to without a rollback, and give money to someone that I don't think in this particular instance was deserving of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Our next speaker, Ms. Stevens, Betty Stevens, on the subject of titles.
My name is Betty Stevens. I live at 4936 Tracy Drive. Is that tall enough there? I'm kind of tall. Good evening, Mayor White, members of the council, and citizens of Haltom City. My topic is titles. What is a title? It's a designation of dignity, honor, distinction. It's attached to a person or family by virtue of rank, office, precedent, privilege, or by attainment. Each of you have a title. You have that title because you earned the title. You attained that title through being elected by the citizens of this community. Every time you are addressed by that title, councilman, mayor, councilwoman, you are reminded of the honor, the respect, and the dignity attached to the title, as well as the person addressing you in such a manner. They are reminded of that respect that is owed to you because of your title. Well, I also have a title, and I too earned my title. My title is citizen. I am Citizen Stevens. I earned it because I live here, because I'm a registered voter, because I own property, and because I pay taxes. I didn't win any kind of contest for that privilege of being called citizens, but I have paid my dues, and I have a membership card, my voter registration. My responsibility to my title is that I am responsible to bring to you, our city council, issues which are of concern, not only to me as an individual, but to other citizens as well. Your responsibility to your title is to answer my questions. It's a two-way street. Mary Beth Shipka and I have been trying to get answers from some of you concerning the repudiation. Our efforts have gone unanswered except from one. A title is nothing more than a word in a dictionary unless you are true to the title itself. We are being true to our title of citizens. We are asking for answers. We have an issue. Have you been true to yours? Have you answered? Thank you, Mayor White. Thank you, Councilman Sutton, Councilman Holcomb, Councilman Lantford, Councilman Clark, Councilman Hutchison, Councilwoman Reese, Councilwoman Branson. I honor you by calling you by your title. Please honor me by answering my emails. I am Citizen Betty Stevens. That is my title, and I wear it with pride. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Grzan. Sorry about that while ago. You wish to speak on the subject of Richard Torres, and since you had two different forms you had filled out, I thought it was important to have that break to be sure everybody understood that. So if you don't mind, give us your name and address again for the record, and you have 6 minutes.
James Grzan, 6208 Little Fossil Road. This just really kind of appalls me. I like Richard Torres as a person, but he was the city manager here. He was hired by a council, quite like the one that is here. He was dismissed by them. He wasn't actually fired. He was basically dismissed. They hired him to do a job. They did not feel like he got that job done. Now I'm told that this city and this council wants to reach a settlement, get this festered wound over with. Well, we've got on our agenda every time we sit down, there's Jane Doe. That represents some ladies that were violated in this city. And I cannot think that there's a person here that doesn't have a daughter, a wife, a relative, sister, that agrees with this. If we have a festered wound, it has to be this one first. We have a 12-year-old kid that was violated and thinks this city owes them something. I do not know the legalities involved. I probably would be much madder if I did. But I think that to single out one lawsuit and talk about settling it and not the others is certainly a violation of those people's rights again. Not only were they violated once, now they're going to be violated again in closed doors. I also am appalled that the city's just willing to give up some money because somebody says, I want to sue. How much money does this council plan to give away in the next year? I was very proud of the council that was elected, but I'm having some second thoughts, folks. And we've got an election coming up in May, and maybe a few of you would like to have another thought about giving much more of this city's money away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grzan. Our next speaker tonight is Scott Garrett. Mr. Garrett, his subject is 2005 budget. If you will, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Scott Garrett, 5005 Jerry Lane. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Respected Mayor and Council, city staff, Haltom city citizens, I'd like to thank you all once again for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I want to just take a couple of minutes to give you, our city leaders, the credit you deserve for the amazing job you've done so far on next year's budget. Judging from the preliminary numbers, it looks as though our fine city is in good hands. We were all anxious to see the numbers that this leadership would be putting forward, and I, for one, am pleased with what I see. With only a minute tax increase, a mere 3 cents, the city will be hiring new employees, giving all city employees an average 4% raise and increasing the general fund reserves by over 46%. Seems to me that the claims by some that Haltom City is just a training spot or jumping off point for city service employees will be silenced by the abundant raises and honest goodwill of this administration toward our police, fire, and all other employees. You're making Haltom City a better place to work and live. Total budget expenditures are down over 11%. Sales tax revenues are up even before the sale of alcohol. And the city will even be taking on more costs of insurance to aid our lower paid employees. Seems to me that this council is holding true to the promise it made to turn this city around. Let me tell you, it's appreciated. Of course, I know of no citizen that likes to have their taxes increased, but the improvements we're seeing here help to soften the blow. As a matter of fact, you seem to be doing so much with so little it makes me wonder what happened before. Under the last council, the city experienced 14.3% increase in taxes in 2003, but there were no new jobs. In fact, jobs got cut. There were no raises for our city employees and certainly no help on their insurance costs. It appears the only thing those increased taxes will go to pay for will be a lawsuit settlement for an ex-city employee, which, by the way, is preferable to draining taxpayers of more money through attorney's fees and court costs. I believe this tax increase is negligible, and for the results we will see from it, I believe it to be a wise investment. I'm sure the naysayers will continue to say our taxes are being raised to offset the cost of senior tax freeze, but the numbers just don't support that claim. We all understand our city needs to grow. We all understand it takes money to grow. It's becoming apparent that our money is being handled correctly and respectfully, and I'd like to thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Our next speaker, John Williams. Mr. Williams wishes to speak on council rewards.
John Williams, 4609 Biscayne, Haltom City. I apologize, nobody wrote me a speech to read, so I'll just have to shoot from the hip. Council rewards, start out with the TV screens here. I don't know the matter for him. I know Mr. Grzan, I'm not going to look at him. Mr. Grzan is legally blind. He's not able to see the council. I know y'all didn't put those TV screens up there for him. At least you can do is get them when y'all are talking, or even if I'm talking. I'm not looking at my cell phone right now, but everybody that's got up here and talks reminds me of the commercial, Got Milk. Every one of them's got a white mustache around their mouth. You need to work on that first. Number two, 14% tax. Told you nobody wrote mine down. Mr. Muir, do you remember what we raised the tax? You can't tell me. It was a little over 6 cents last year. Right short of 7 cents. Raising another 3 cents, going to look at a dime in the last 2 years under the mayor's regimes. That's 10 cents raised in the last 2 years. This council, yeah, y'all done good. Tom has worked very hard, I'm sure. All the department heads, let's give them a little bit of credit too. But I'm not sure, there's a lot of hours with the department heads and with the city manager and the city secretary working toward this budget. It's not each one of you seven, and it's not you, the mayor. I got a little tickled at you, the mayor, a while ago with that gavel. We better make sure that thing is tied on good, because somebody here is going to get hit and turns loose. That thing popping like that, I mean, just a little would be suffice. But, I mean, if you want to throw it over your deal, you know, have that. I'm having a blast. I'm out of there. I'm not getting my $20 a month. Dave Lever's back there on the back row. He's writing 90 to nothing. Richard's attorney's here. He's writing. I'm glad to see he's left-handed. The only thing I've got to tell you, Miss Stevens got up here. She's sent you emails. She tells me that none of y'all are returning her emails. The day after the last council meeting, I sent each one of you an email, including the city secretary, including the city manager. I got a response from Bill Langford. The last response I got was a couple of weeks ago. Miss Reese sent me one, and I think Miss Branson sent me one. You sent me one that said, yeah, I read your email, and you sent me one and told me later that it was too late to email me like that late at night. My computer's on all night. Y'all can email me 24 hours a day. If I send you an email, I'd like to have an email in return. What I'd ask y'all the last time, when y'all froze the taxes, that was very admirable. But you gave the seniors hardly anything. The people that got up here and talked, if they went home, checked their tax bill, got on their computer, or called the city secretary, and found out what they got their city taxes froze at was nothing. They froze nothing. Take an ice tray, put it in the refrigerator, let it sit on that. If you didn't put any water in it, you get out next morning, you're having an empty ice tray. And that's about what they got, was an empty ice tray. And I'd called y'all or emailed y'all with a suggestion about raising the tax exemption. Nobody on this council but Mr. Langford felt it important enough to call me back about it. So I would suggest, if y'all want to serve the city, please return your emails or turn your computer in and do away with emails. That's all I got. I'm having a heck of a time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and that concludes the people who have signed up to address the council under the Visitor Citizens Forum tonight. We move now to the boards and commissions. I believe we have 4 resignations, and we will start with Council Member Bransom.
Thank you. I have a resignation from the Planning and Zoning from Bill Nickel.
Okay. If you would, register your wishes regarding ratification of this resignation. Okay, and that passes by unanimous vote. Councilmember Holcomb?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also have a resignation from Planning and Zoning, pardon me, Planning and Zoning Place 2 for James White.
Okay, if you'll register your vote regarding ratification, and that passes by unanimous vote. Councilmember Sutton?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a resignation from Jackie Woodard of the Fire Services Board.
Okay, and ratification on that by unanimous vote. And I have one, Mr. Ray Eklund, on the Sexually Oriented Business Board. If you would, I'm asking for ratification on that. And that passes by unanimous vote. Any other resignations? Okay, there being none, we move now to the appointments. Councilmember Bransom, I believe you have an appointment to make.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to appoint Jackie Woodard of 5713 Ridgeview Drive to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay. If you will, register your vote regarding ratification of that appointment. And that is by unanimous vote. Councilmember Lanford?
I have 4 nominations. You want to do them all at once, or?
Let's do them all at once unless somebody asks to break them out individually.
Okay.
And if they do,
for
then
for the Fire Services, Ronnie Porter. For the Parks and Recreation, Jody Allen. For ZBA, James White. And for Beautification Board, Diane McGee.
Okay. If you will, register your preference regarding these appointments. And that passes by unanimous vote. Councilmember Hutchison, I believe you have some appointments to make.
Yes, I have, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have 3 appointments to make. Tonight for the Fire Services Board, I'd like to appoint Mr. Frank Shelton of 5617 Ammons. I'd like to appoint to the Sexually Oriented Board of Appeals, Mr. Norm Kingsley of 5305 Fossil Drive. And for the Zoning Board of Adjustments, I'd like to appoint Val Whitfield of 3100 Meadow Oaks.
Okay, you've heard the appointments. We're now seeking ratification. If you will, register your vote. And that passes by unanimous vote. Do we have, Jim, I believe, Councilmember Sutton, I believe you have
Thank you, Mayor.
an appointment.
Yes, I have one appointment. I'd like to appoint Larry Pinkerton of 2401 Harrow Lane, and this will be to the Planning and Zoning.
Okay, have a nomination to the Planning and Zoning. If you will, register your vote. And those passed by unanimous votes. All of them did. There being no further action, the council will take in regular session. We will move now into executive session as authorized by the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071 and .072. No action will be taken in executive session. Any action will be taken when we return to open session. Is everything Ladies and gentlemen, the council is back in open session following an executive session. And at this time, I will ask our attorney, Mr. Wayne Olson, to introduce the proceedings from this point.
Mayor, we've had a discussion in executive session, and the question is whether or not the council's ready to make a motion on acceptance of a settlement agreement that was negotiated.
Okay, we're ready to call for a motion regarding the matter discussed in executive session. Councilmember Lanford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the settlement agreement with Richard Torres as discussed in executive session.
Have a motion to approve. Councilmember Holcomb.
That's a second.
Have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, ladies and gentlemen, if you will register your vote, I will display it at this time. And that passes by unanimous vote. And now, Mr. Olson, if you will.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'd like to introduce Bill Kruger, who's an attorney that was hired to represent the city in this litigation, to give some explanation on the terms of the settlement to the citizens and those watching at home.
Thank you, City Attorney Olson, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Bill Kruger, and I've had the pleasure of representing the city of Haltom, City, Texas, in the litigation today, and thank you for taking my picture. Let me tell you something about the lawsuit. This is going to be a whistleblower lawsuit that was brought by Mr. Torres for the good faith report of a violation of law, which led, arguably, to his termination. This report was made to the city in October of 2003, and it was made also to the district attorney here in Tarrant County. 3 days later, Mr. Torres was terminated. This lawsuit would require litigation. There would be very many questions of fact, and there'd be no potential for a dispositive motion that would avoid the litigation, the trial of this case, to a jury. The whistleblower lawsuits are dangerous in that in situations such as this, the city of Haltom City could be looking at $200,000 if, in fact, the actual damages are awarded, additional fees up to or close to $200,000 in attorney's fees in the event that it goes through trial and appeal. Finally, a damage that could be awarded in a whistleblower lawsuit would be reinstatement. That after you pay this money, after you've made these sacrifices, after you have spent your own litigation fees in the case, you could find yourself having Mr. Torres reinstated. So that after all this expenditures for the plaintiff's attorney, for the plaintiff's damages, for your own attorney, you could find yourself in a situation where you would have the same employee back. In reviewing this, we have found that the settlement should be, and it's been my recommendation, that the settlement should be entered, and that's a $120,000 settlement. It's below the calculation of damages that I could foresee in the case, and it's justifiable by the terms of the whistleblower statute. This $70,000, well, this $120,000, $70,000 of that is not paid by the city of Haltom. $70,000 of that is paid by the indemnitor, the Texas Municipal League, that represents and pays my bill, and that has agreed to indemnify the city of Haltom. That's $70,000 it's paid. The city finds itself in a situation where this lawsuit, which could cost it a lot more, cost $50,000. A very, very good number, a generous number, but although a conservative number and a good one. I recommend that settlement, and I stand by that recommendation. It's a good settlement. With regard to that, the city has agreed to make a press release indicating that there was a termination and that there has been a settlement reached. The city has agreed to offer Mr. Torres reinstatement, which Mr. Torres rejects and does not want to come back. The city has made those settlement decisions, and there again, with my recommendation, to end this chapter for the city of Haltom so that it can move forward. As we speak, the documents will be finalized and can't be released until they are final. In that situation, once the documents have been finalized, they can be released to the public for full review, and your own determinations can be made. But the minds of the 8 council people have all been in union, and I think have all been to the benefit of the city. This is a lawsuit that could cost a lot more money, but with regard to the citizens and to the city council, the people have thought about it and have decided that $50,000 is a sufficient amount. Now, there is a deductible that will be paid, that would be paid for any claim that would be made. Again, the documents, once they're finalized, they will be released. A motion to dismiss this case will be filed, and that motion will be with prejudice, and that will forever conclude this lawsuit with Mr. Torres and end this chapter in Haltom City's history. Thank you.
And Mr. Kruger, I might also explain that as a part of the settlement, not only is Mr. Torres agreeing to indemnify and release the city, but he's also agreeing to release any city employees and officials and former council members in exchange for this settlement agreement. Mayor, if I might, one last statement. Mr. Torres' attorney asked us to explain that Richard wanted to be here tonight, but he was unable to attend due to circumstances beyond his control, and that he is satisfied with the settlement.
Okay, there being no further action to be taken, no further discussion on this matter, we stand adjourned.